Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is Ukraine War Update Extra, a little bit of news from an NBC article that I wanted to walk you through because I think it's pretty fascinating in giving you an insight into the mind of some Ukrainian soldiers fighting on the front line in light of the developments with peace negotiations or this kind of surrender document, the 28-point peace plan, and the subsequent positioning of, for example, the American administration, the Trump administration, with regard to forcing Ukraine to a peace that they don't want to adopt because it's not a peace plan. It's a capitulation project. And how does that affect those fighting on the front line, fighting for their sovereignty, for their homeland, and for their families and friends, and for the idea of a free and sovereign Ukraine being forced to hand over what they've hard fought for to the Russians by supposed allies. And NBC has an article on this that I think is fascinating. It's quite a long article. I'm going to dip into the areas hopefully that just deal with kind of what the Ukrainians themselves have been saying. In the meantime, look, if you haven't already done so, please remember to subscribe to the channel. Really makes a difference, helps out a lot, etc., etc. Thank you. Right, let's get on and have a look at this article. So here we have it. Ukrainian soldiers see the Trump plan as, quote, capitulation, even as they dream of peace. So from his position on the Eastern front lines, the original peace plan backed by President Donald Trump looked more like a proposal for Vladimir Rzhavsky's surrender. It's not, quote, it's not a plan. It's a real capitulation. There is nothing to discuss here, said Rzhavsky, a senior sergeant serving near Pokrovsk, a supply hub under intense pressure from Russian forces for some 18 months. While Ukrainian officials fought for changes to the 28-point plan that emerged last week, NBC News spoke with soldiers in the country's embattled military who expressed frustration at the idea Moscow would be handed its hardline demands, but also hope that they might soon be able to return to their lives. Quote, I'm against giving up those parts of Donetsk region that we still hold, said Rzhavsky, 44, who hails from the Eastern Industrial Heartland. Is now fighting to protect from Russia's assault. Under the original proposal, Rzhavsky would lay down his weapon. The Donbass, comprising fiercely contested Donetsk and Russia-controlled Luhansk, would be recognized as de facto Russian. Quote, of course, for me, this is a painful issue because all of this is happening in my homeland, Rzhavsky, who commands a drone unit, said on the phone. Rzhavsky, an entrepreneur before the war, said 4 years on the front line since the Kremlin's full-scale invasion have destroyed his health. If there is peace, he said, he would focus on recovery and his two sons, aged 5 and 14. But he said he would not want to hear, he would want to hear a clear explanation from military leadership about why Ukraine's army should abandon positions that it still holds, including in his native Donetsk. Quote, if it comes without an explanation, it will not be carried out, he said. It's not the state leadership sitting in the trenches. It's our boys in the trenches. They have the right to decide, he said. He added. So this is incredible. Like, if we're not given a clear explanation as to why we should give up this land, we ain't going to give up this land. Like, we're the ones fighting, not the people sitting in offices back in Kiev. Now, I don't think the Kiev administration would want to give up Donbass. I think that would be absolutely insane for them to do so. It depends how much pressure is put on them by the US, and then how much the Europeans say, no, we're going to stand up for Ukraine, so on and so forth. So, I don't know how much time people in trenches spend surveying the political landscapes of these countries around the world that you and I do, right? We have a luxury of being able to commit loads of time because we're not, I don't know, hiding from drones and trying to shoot people running at us. And so the people fighting on the front lines will, and I was speaking to James from Why Ukraine, who previously had his active YouTube channel and he was kind of doing little bits for the Ukrainian army. Then he was serving with the International Legion still. Now he's in the Azov International Battalion. He said, look, I have very little time to follow what's going on now as we're, fighting in this particular area and doing this and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's difficult for active troops to really have a much greater sense of the macro view, macro understanding of the war, or of any war. As negotiations continue, Kiev's forces are being squeezed in a number of directions. but I want to get more into the views of different fighters. So let's go to Alexander. In one of those regions, Alexander, a lieutenant with Ukraine Special Forces fighting in the south, said he and his fellow soldiers were carefully following developments around the peace plan. So the idea here is these guys are actually following things. The situation where he is stationed was not as difficult as in the east, so that could be why they're a bit more time in their hands. Russians are so desperate to take the Donbass, he said, that they are draining their troops from the south for the task. An interesting observation there. Alexander, who did not want his last name revealed due to the nature of his service, said in audio messages sent on WhatsApp that he also rejected many of the plan's key points. So this is the original 28-point peace plan. Scare quotes, peace plan. Quote, nobody will make concessions on the size of the military because it's our security guarantee, said Alexander, 43, referring to the proposed 600,000 strong cap on Ukraine's military. Quote, nobody will make concessions on the territories because it's our land and we stand here. There is strong consensus among Ukrainians that concessions of land that Russia does not control are unacceptable, said Bielyskov, who is what is Bielyskov? I used to Mykola Bielyskov. I used to use him quite a bit as a source, a military analyst and research fellow at the National Institute for Strategic Studies. That was it. So asking soldiers, quote, who risked their lives and lost their comrades to slow down the Russian offensive to now abandon positions they still hold in Donetsk is not likely to go down very well, he said. Quote, I won't speculate on how people will behave if there is an order to leave, but clearly it won't be taken positively. And that's a real... I'd love someone to take this kind of thinking to someone like Trump, who says, "Oh, they all want to stop. Everyone wants the war to stop. Ukrainians want this to stop," and blah blah blah. You're like, actually, they don't want it to stop. On the front, these people fighting don't want to stop if it means that they have to give up the very thing they're fighting for. So, Mr. Trump, have a much greater sense of what's going on. Now, I'm going to do a video if I have a chance later today, maybe tomorrow. There have been two interviews I've watched recently where they have discussed very openly that Trump doesn't have a clue what's going on outside of his kind of circle, and nor do the people in information bubbles that just watch, say, Fox News. Like, for example, during the Epstein scandal stuff that was erupting over the last couple of weeks, Fox News barely mentioned the Epstein scandal once. Like, they literally didn't report on it. So then the people who are following only that kind of news source don't know about it. And the same with Trump. There's this idea that he is not being told, like, how badly things are going in the polls around the country, for example. Now, if that's happening in all these other dimensions, and I know you might not want me to talk about American politics here, but it's really important, because if these are the people making decisions about the future of Ukraine, garbage in, garbage out, like, if they don't have a handle on A, actually what's going on in Ukraine, and B, how the people in Ukraine feel about such decisions, then they're not going to kind of garbage in, garbage out. Bad decisions get made when you don't have a decent handle on what's going on. And all the information coming out from the Trump administration at the moment is that he doesn't really understand what's going on outside of what he's being told by key people around him. So he used to spend a lot of time on Twitter, and that could give him a sense of what's going on with opinions. But apparently he spends all his time on Truth Social now, and even you can argue he doesn't even do his own posts on either of the platforms. And so if you spend all your time on Truth Social and watching Fox News, you live in an information bubble that is just self-referential, and you are bound to have a poor grasp on reality, and therefore are much more likely to make bad decisions. So there you go. Ukraine shouldn't be rushed into a peace agreement that amounts to capitulation, Alexander said. A father of two, he ran a small cocktail bar in central Kyiv before he volunteered to join the army in 2022. But he said he wasn't thinking about returning to a peaceful life yet. Quote, if we don't stop them now, then our children will have to do this. And we can't let this happen. Junior Lieutenant Oli Zontov, who has been through the war twice. He served in the east against Moscow-based separatists in 2014 and has battled the Kremlin's full-scale invasion since 2022. For Zontov, 58, the fact that there is some peace plan in the works is good news. Zontov, who served as part of the airborne assault unit in Donetsk before moving to a more civilian-focused role, said when there is peace, he would love to return to life as head of the communications department in an investment company in Kyiv. He said judging the peace proposal was hard, given that the goalposts around what would constitute a victory have shifted based on Ukraine's battlefield fortunes, from a last-ditch stand for survival to a bid to reclaim all its territory. Quote, today, victory would probably mean stopping the enemy where it is now and holding it at these positions, he said in a phone interview, echoing the official stance of Ukraine and its allies that a ceasefire should begin at the current front lines. Abandoning Ukrainian-controlled territories like Donetsk would be, quote, a very controversial decision that would cause outrage and negativity within the military, he said. Lieutenant Dmytro Melnik, is serving as a drone operator in the central Dnipropetrovsk region, where he said the Russians were pressing forward and Moscow's superiority in numbers and ammunition was hard to overcome. In audio messages sent on WhatsApp, Melnik said his equipment was technically inferior. Quote, the Russians are not better warriors than us. They're just so few of us, Melnik said. And then, talk about struggling to recruit, so on and so forth. But Melnik harbored hope for peace after years of fighting. It continues later, quote, things are getting more and more scary every day, said Melnik, 46, a professional para-athlete who completed the Paris Paralympics last summer after getting battlefield leave. He said he dreams of returning to his wife Tatiana and their 2 daughters in Dnipro, where he could return to coaching to become a school teacher. Quote, at the beginning of the war, we were like, go, 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 and it's not that case anymore. Obviously, I won't stop until the war is done, but my soul is torn, Melnik said. Though he maintained the peace plan was an unacceptable demand for his country's capitulation. Quote, I won't hide it. There is a constant fear of dying, Melnik said. So you got a number of things going on here, like giving up territory that's not been fought over, i.e. the rest of Donbass, is a red line and it would be completely unacceptable. Unless there's a really good explanation for that, then it ain't going to happen as far as the people fighting there themselves are concerned. So it's very dangerous for the US to dictate this to Ukraine, for the Ukrainian delegation and politicians and president to then, I guess, begrudgingly accept giving away Donbass. You could be met with some kind of military mutiny or whatever. But at the same time, these people are tired. They've been fighting for years. They fear death every single day, and they do want to get back to normal life. And so, that is going to be playing a role inside these people as they calculate, what should and shouldn't be done, or not even the should, but what you can accept being done, because you're exhausted and you want to get back to your family and you don't want to die. So all of these, what you don't want to do is force people to make that kind of decision, to have this dilemma as like, well, I don't want to give up my country, but also I want to get back to my family. What you want is Europe and Ukraine to be able to strongly defend their sovereignty in negotiations. And the problem is the United States appears to have completely, turned coat here and started advocating and on behalf of and arguing for the Kremlin position, which is, I think, completely unacceptable. So I think this is just a fascinating insight. And I'm happy that NBC News has actually gone to frontline troops and asked them, hey, what's your opinion on this? Because I think that's really, really important. Gives us another flavor of things generally. But let me know what you think. I mean, my position is pretty obvious that the American administration is being, I think, egregious in their approach to the peace negotiations. The Wall Street Journal article that I talked about yesterday, saying that this isn't about peace, it's about business. I mean, that was what Donald Tusk, the Prime Minister of Poland, has said. Let alone anyone else involved with Ukraine. This is a leader of another nation saying the American approach is all about business, and that is my position. That's egregious, and that needs to change. So yeah, I'm it doesn't surprise me, these opinions from the soldiers, but I do find it an important article, this, because it gives voice to people that we don't often give enough voice to. We often talk about Ukraine without the fighters' input here. Okay, that's enough for me. Remember, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.